Hi guys. So as part of this section, we are seeing about the Django shortcut function. So last video we discussed about how to handle that loader template and HTTP response and render method. So this section we are going to discuss few more topic which is also is a part of shortcut function. The reason I'm spending specific video I'm creating specific video for shortcut function is this is something critical part uh, because we have to we are using this shortcut function in many places in our project, but sometimes we don't know what it actually does. So that is the main purpose I'm uh, creating separate video for shortcut function. And before jump into the section, we created the recently posted the blog um, about the JavaScript GET request approach. This is one of the our Techion suggestion which we received last week about how to handle the GET method or how to handle GET API request from Django. So this blog, which is not specifically to Django, but specifically to JavaScript, how to handle it. As long as you know how to render the data, how to pass the data from backend to front end, then this post will give you better understanding of that. And also we provided here how to not only a single approach, various developer have various opinion about each individual approach, so we consolidated all the approach in a single post. So of course we will create a video for this, but for time being, if you guys have any concern or any doubt on how to render the fetch request or um, get request from backend, and this is where you can end up with here. Okay, so let's jump on. So today I want to talk about the redirect shortcut function. So redirect is something like it's the name itself, right? When we navigate to one place to other place, or redirect our direction from one place to other place, right? That is all about handling the redirect in Django. So if the request is sent by the client, when I say client, it's from your browser, and if the request is satisfied and or not satisfied, whatever the condition we're handling in a view, then we can decide what redirect page we want to route the client request to which place, right? So that is all about redirect. So redirect has method has 4 argument. So one is mandatory, and you can see, right, redirect, it has two. So basically where we have to redirect, that is all about 2. And star arg, if you familiar with the Python args and keyword args, is pretty much sending the argument and keyword argument. And also we have the permanent false. So if you understand what is 301 302 issues, so that basically if you provide permanent equal to true, then which will say the client browser, hey, this page has been completely moved from this path to this path, some kind of error we can say. So that is all about having the permanent. So these are the 4 argument which we can pass into the redirect method. So using redirect, we can basically using 3 approach we can use this redirect. So we'll start one by one and we'll see how we can implement in our projects and view whenever it's needed, because in all the situation we may not use all the three, but sometimes some situation we may need to use each individual method in order to handle it. That's why I just want to cover those all three approach here. Okay, so let's jump onto our view. So before we jump onto view, I just want to make sure as per this series we created the post model, right? Uh, and it has the title. It's a single direct method, sorry, field, and under str method here, and we do have forms. It has a post form. So this is the form we are talking about, the post form, and we do have the URL and everything. Now let's create. I'm gonna comment the top layer, which is something we covered in last video. And now I want to, instead of typing the code, let me uncomment the code which I already created so that I can go over line by line and we'll see what is happening. So this has index and it has by default aux or keyword aux. We can have it or we cannot. It is not a mandatory argument, so we can get rid of this also. But for time being, I just want to stick with this. And we have the form, and we are creating the form, not creating the form. We import from forms.py. That's called post form. And let me get rid of this for time being. So basically, we initiate the form when the page has been when we get the request to this view. So either this form get a post data, or either this form will receive no data. That's called none, right? So having the form and this method we discussed in the last video, and return render request, and I'm using the post form HTML here. So post form here as it is. Of course, you can use class-based view, but we are going to cover in upcoming videos about those class-based view, but I want to stick with function-based view here. So that's why we have to pass context. So what is the context, right? Basically, I want to send this form to my HTML page in order to render it, all right? I can uncomment this line and make sure I have this context. This context has this form data. So if I save this and go back to our page, what do we see? We are seeing the title and we do have the submit button. It's a straightforward form. That title is coming from where? From this post form. The post form we are initiating here. As you notice, it's not having the none. That's why we can able to render the data. Now, as we are talking about the redirect, right? So just in order to test this redirect, I want to make sure, hey, when I provided some title and click on submit, I want to go to, or I want to navigate the page. Once I click the submit button, I want to navigate to the newly created post, or otherwise we can say, let's say I'm creating blog 1. If I click submit, I have to navigate to that blog 1 post. So I just want to understand, I just want to see, hey, this post has been created, right? That is the use case we usually see in most of the blog posts. Let's say if you're doing, if your user creating some post, and once they click submit, then they should able to navigate to the respective post, whether wherever he or she created, right? So that is what I want to do here. So in order to do that, so we do have form. So this I just can easily and comment this line. We'll see line by line. So once the form is, once the submit button is clicked, so it will take this form as valid and will check the form is valid. If the form is valid, then we are checking the commit false. I hope you guys are aware about commit false. If not, let me know. We'll create a separate video for that. And then we are saving that object. We can directly use form.save, but I just want to go with this approach because I want to grab the newly creating object, right? So once the object is saved, this will be stored the data into database. I want to grab the data. I want to grab the database. I want to get the data from the database, right? That's the reason I stick with this approach here. So how can we get that the object which has been created, right? So as this is a post model which we are dealing now, we can use post objects get method query set. It's not a query set, it's a object instance, and I just want to get the ID. I can, since ID is a unique primary value, so I can pass the ID equal to new object.id, because this is the new object instance has been created from the form. So I can simply pass that new object here and get the object. So let's test it out. Okay, so we can test it this, but once our requirement is, once it's created, it has to navigate to the newly created post, right? So let me get rid of this. Let's say the slash. We'll go through what is actually happening. Let me refresh this page. New post, submit. What you're seeing, the new post, right? That's what we want to have it. That's super cool. But as we noticed earlier, or as we saw in our the readme file, right? The first approach, it can redirect to any URL. So first method is, if you want, let's say once this object has been created, I want to go to that page, right? That is the requirement. But as long as you know that URL, you can pass that ID, right? But in our case, we don't have a separate URL to handle it. So that's why I just kept as it is a with a home URL. So as long as if you know what is your destination URL, you can provide those URL in a return method, in a redirect method. So the first method is, you can pass any URL to the redirect method to redirect to the request to any page. So I can copy something like this. I can, yes, it should work. Not sure. Let's see. another post, submit, perfect, right? So this is kind of any URL we can provide as long as that's what if you require, right? But our requirement, we want to go to the newly created object, but some situation we may need to go to some URL, right? Let's say when the users clicked some submit some button, submit some value or forms, it has to go to different uh, services or different API or different application itself. So those situation, this redirect will really help us to use as a direct URL. Okay, but this is something we don't want. We want to navigate to the the new URL or the newly created post. That is what the second option. So we can use um, direct method of get absolute URL. So this is the another out of the box method which is in Django. So basically it will convert that the request path as a URL pattern to send back to the view. We'll see in action in a moment. So for example, if I get rid of this, now I know this get object is a current object or is a newly created object. What if, because as you see here, the parameters 2, I want to redirect to that particular post object, right? So let me create the redirect, and it has to pass to that newly created object called get object. Let me save this and see what will happen. Save, refresh, some post. Wow, 14. It's going to the new post, but what's happening? Let's see. Okay, I just want to get rid of this for a moment. Okay, I'll come back to the why I commented that line because for testing, I just want to show you what will happen if you don't have that URL pattern. Okay, let me refresh the page again. Let's create a new post. Wow. So it goes to the new ID because that is what we have given here, because get object by default it is an ID. It will go to the ID of a newly created object, a newly created post, but this URL we don't have in our pattern, right? Just before I commented this line, right? So what is happening here is when you provided that object instance here, right, to the redirect method, by default this redirect will call this get absolute URL method, and this get absolute method will call another method called reverse that will convert our object instance. It will convert this object instance as a URL pattern. As you see, we have slash self.id. So this self.id is from this post data model or post model, and as I am using f string, and I provide as the trailing slash. If I get rid of this line trailing slash and save this, we'll go back to the page, type again. I by default create the trailing slash. So that's super cool, right? Because that's what we want. Once it created that URL pattern, then Django was looking for, hey, I created the URL pattern for you. Then where is my URL to go, right? Then it will check that URL here, and it'll goes to url.py file and check for that URL pattern. Now, if I uncomment this line, so what basically we created we're passing the ID as a parameter, and we created we'll show you in a moment about that. We created the view function called detail, and we name it as detail. Save this file, and if I refresh now, I should see the newly created post. So this is what we want, right? But is this the right approach? Some situation, yes, but all the situation, we don't want to hard coded that ID column here, right? Rather, we can use this approach. So we can, as I mentioned you before, right? This pattern will convert. This will call by default reverse method, right? So that's what happening. So once that object instance has been called here, it will go to models.py and get that URL from here. So what is happening here is it returning the reverse of the function in your app. Basically, the function name is detail. So so where this detail? This detail from here or the function or from the view. We'll see in action now. Let me rename this as to, let's stick with detail for just now, and let's and we'll see what is rendering in the UI. So it's a view name, and we can pass the ID. Let's save this, go back. Cool, this is also working. What if I change this to details? Save this, refresh, still it's working. Reason, it's getting from here. So basically it's not looking this method here. So if I refresh, am I doing something wrong? Okay, let's create another post. So there is no detail function call because the reverse is not able to find out the view. So is this coming from this name? So let's change this to details. Save this. Come on. Okay, now go back. Save. Awesome. So that view or this function name is coming from the url.py, right? So this is how that URL pattern is generating when we use get observed URL method. So this is super cool, right? And one more method, right? Some situation, let's say in another app we do have a same name called details, so we don't want to confuse our URL get observed method URL to handle it. So in order to segregate, in order to handle those in our Django template, we can pass the app name to the model in our get observed method. So if I get uncomment this line and I can pass app name in our app name called tutorial, right? So can simply pass tutorial colon details, because in our case it's a details. So I can rename to detail because it's no makes sense if we have details, because it's going to be a single post. So can change this to detail, save this, and refresh. I should see the same behavior, right? So this is the I would say this is a beginner, and sometimes we may use this, and um, advanced programmer or experts, I would say, they will stick with this approach. Basically, they provide a app name dot the colon with then the function name. So this is where some people will get confused whether it's this name or the view name, right? So that is the reason I just rename, explain this with a different name details. I hope it makes sense of having the URL, Git absolute URL here. Okay, we use just a detailed page, right? I don't want to jump into here detail level, but as we discussed about the redirect method, I just want to I just created this detail page to render the data. So this is how we need to render the or redirect the given object instance to a separate page. So I hope it one more. I think we can pass the org ID also here. If you see this reverse approach, if I comment this line, and as I mentioned here, right, we can pass argument also. So we can, once you get the object instance, we can pass the detail view name, just like this. So this is also, this is called reverse approach. So let's do this, because right now I'm not redirecting to any object instance, rather I'm redirecting to the view name. So if you see, I'm redirecting to the view. So this is not this view name. So let me change these to details for time being, and stick with detail, and save this, go back to our page, fresh, submit. Tutorial is not registered in space. Okay, let me, because let me get rid of this get absolute URL, because I didn't create namespace. So cool. So I can able to navigate to the newly created post. So this is another approach of passing the, instead of going the object instance level, we can go by the view level. So if I change this to details, let's see, will it work? No. So detail is not defined. This detail and this detail we are using in model is totally different. So so don't get confused on this. So this redirect detail is calling another view. That is called, that is all about the reverse approach. So basically we are reversing our request to another view. Um, so that's all about having the view name here. So let me consolidate all what we covered so far. So one with first we can pass the redirect as an URL. We can pass any URL. That is one approach. Another approach is we can pass the get absolute URL method using this reverse inbuilt method. And in the get absolute method itself, we can use all these three different approach. And another method is approach called reverse approach. Reverse approach is basically redirecting to the given view. I hope it more makes sense if we started building the project. If you have any doubt on this, let me know. You can always post a suggestion here. We will help you on it. Thank you guys.